there was a huge amount of optimism at the start of this season for Aston Martin. With the new investment from the car brand, many thought that it would result in a step up the order. But even with a new name, new driver, and a new factory on the way, so far this year the team have found themselves struggling nearer the back of the pack and perhaps fighting for the last couple of points finishing positions. This is until Monaco, where the team took a big step in the right direction. But what's gone wrong for Aston Martin? And has their Monaco result set themselves up for more success in the coming races? Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. Just 3 months ago I posted a video that was discussing whether Aston Martin could become a front-running team in Formula 1. And I still believe that that's the case for all the reasons that I mentioned in that video. But in the short term, the team have gone backwards in what was meant to be another competitive season where the so-called Racing Point car would allow them to have the similar competitive season to 2020. Prior to the Monaco Grand Prix, the team sat 7th in the championship, with just 5 points to their name, compared to 5th position and 42 points after 4 races last season. But in Monaco, the team took a giant leap forwards, scoring 14 points. In this video I'll take a look at the changes between last season and this season, and where they've lost out compared to their midfield rivals, and then whether their Monaco performance could be a sign of things to come. And as always, if you enjoy this video, then please leave it a like and hit the subscribe button, as it massively supports the channel. And if you're interested, you can follow me on Twitter too. The link will be in the description. The low rake dilemma. The rule changes coming into this season were deemed to be fairly small. The main changes were the new Pirelli tyre constructions, which were generally more durable than the previous versions, which is obviously the same change for all teams. And then the other main change was the reduced floor, which brought the floor in by about 100mm on each side, just ahead of the rear tyres. Both of these changes were designed to reduce the pressure on the Pirelli tyres, and it's done the job. The 2021 cars are indeed slower than their predecessors with less downforce. But early on in the season, Aston Martin's leadership felt that the rules had been designed to hinder the lower rake concept cars, which is the design philosophy that the team had in their 2020 car, more than the higher rake cars. Now I'm confident that the rules weren't designed this way, and I've spoken about why this is the case before. But I think the biggest element to look at here is the difference in reaction to the situation between Mercedes and Aston Martin. Mercedes responded to a tough 3 days of testing by heading back to the drawing board. They made setup changes and tried to wrestle with what looked like an unstable rear end at the Bahrain track. In those 2 weeks between testing and the first race, the team took what seemed like a car that was a few tenths off the pace and managed to convert it to a 1-3 finish come the end of the weekend. And yes, they weren't the quickest car on Saturday, with Max Verstappen taking pole. And yes, Sergio Perez ended up starting the race from the pit lane. But Mercedes found a way to ensure they left the Bahrain circuit with a lead in both World Championships. Since that first round in the Bahrain this season, I would say that Mercedes have become better and better. And the fact that they've seen such a quick rebound when compared to the Red Bull car shows how determined they were to get back to that lead position that they've grown accustomed to since 2014. There were some quips in the media, with Toto Wolff saying that the regulations were specifically designed to change the pecking order, but to follow this up, he added that it's just about doing the best possible job without complaining. So even when pressed on the fact that the low rake concept cars were penalised more by these new regulations, his main comment was the fact that the Mercedes team wouldn't complain about the rules and would focus on making sure that they'd made the best possible car, which, as I've mentioned already, is exactly what they've done. Aston Martin, on the other hand, took the opposite approach. Let's start by taking a quick look at the Racing Point's approach last season. The RP20 was a controversial car as soon as it was unveiled, as it looked pretty much identical to the Mercedes W10, their 2019 challenger. The so-called tracing point was very quickly queried by the team's competitors, and in the end was penalised for the rear brake ducts. However, it shows that the team were not averse to controversial moves to ensure that they can achieve the maximum that they can with their smaller budget. This season the team continued with a modified version of their 2020 challenger, as was mandated by the new aerodynamic regulations. The team took the 2020 rear suspension from the Mercedes car, as was allowed without any token spend, and spent their 2 development tokens on their chassis. Once testing got underway, the Aston Martin team struggled with both pace and reliability of their new challenger. Once it became clear that they'd become disadvantaged by the fact that they'd run a low rake concept, Team principal Otmar Safnauer said that the low-rake cars were hampered significantly more than the higher-rake cars. These words were followed in April with public comments about who had influenced the new regulations, which had been implemented on safety grounds and coincided with the Pirelli rule changes. Safnauer asked for discussions with the FIA and whether something could be done to make it more equitable. To ask the sport's governing body to consider changing the regulations within a season is pretty much the opposite approach of Mercedes. And to be honest, it doesn't look great on the team, as it heavily implies that they don't believe that they can develop their way out of their current predicament. Plus, the cost for each of the teams if the rules were to be modified would be huge, and many teams will have already been transferring the majority of their focus to their 2022 cars anyway, and by doing so, they would just create more controversy given the new budget cap in place for this season. So a controversial and negative move from the company in my opinion. This move also shines a light on what may have gone wrong for the team. After the delays to the new regulations were announced last season, it was expected that the team would be able to benefit from their strong 2020 challenger for 2 seasons. But the rug was clearly pulled from underneath them rather unexpectedly. But to then go to the FIA in Formula 1 to ask for clarification of the rules, rather than instead focusing on themselves and what they could do to help rectify their problems, says a lot about the mentality of the team. I expect this will change with time, as the team grows with additional investment from Aston Martin and can spend more money on their car for each season, getting closer to the budget cap limit. They will improve and start to develop their way out of situations just like this one, and I think their current situation is quite unique as it's a one-off rule change that's just for this season. But particularly when you compare them to the Mercedes team who went through a similar challenge, it's quite clear that of the 2 approaches shown, one is far superior. The drivers. Aston Martin made a statement move in the volatile driver market for the 2021 season, as they brought in the 4-time world champion, Sebastian Vettel. It was a sensible move for the team, as it brings in that experience that could prove to be invaluable if they get to a stage where their car's capable of competing at the front of the order. Having a driver that's experienced competing for a world championship before will help them to have that extra 1 or 2% that could bring home extra points for the team as a whole. The move came at a cost, as the team had 2 drivers that were contracted to the team already in Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez. Stroll has been at the team since 2019 and is pretty much in that seat because his father owns the team. So given that he has that connection, it was never going to be the case that the 22-year-old would be dropped from the team. Perez, on the other hand, has been at the team since 2014, where he's delivered 5 podiums for the midfield team up until the 2020 season. He's done an impressive job to deliver trophies in cars that were not expected to be capable of doing so. Not only this, but he's even made moves to save the teams by forcing them into administration, which ultimately saved hundreds of jobs and stopped the team from going under and being lost from the grid. So he's given a good chunk of his Formula 1 career to that team, but ultimately he was the driver to lose out and was replaced by Sebastian Vettel. It was a controversial move that ultimately proved the fact that Lance Stroll has a guaranteed seat at the Aston Martin team until either his father stops owning the team or he retires from the sport. It was known that this would be the case already, but I think it was tough for Formula 1 fans to take, knowing that we could have lost Sergio Perez from the grid as a result. This didn't end up being the case, as we now know, given Perez moved to Red Bull, but the risk was there, and for many it suggested that Aston Martin would never be able to reach their full potential with Lance Stroll at the team. And it's a fair point, as let's face it, a teammate partnership of Sergio Perez and Sebastian Vettel would be one of the best on the grid. The team opted to switch out their most experienced driver for one that would be new to the team and was coming off the back of one of his poorest seasons in the sport and had just been dropped by Ferrari. Vettel has had a tough start to this season, not scoring his first points until the 5th race in Monaco. After the Spanish Grand Prix, he said, "It's not a secret, we're not as strong as we expected this year," which is a good summary of how it's been going for the team more generally, as well as how it's going for Vettel himself. But it's worth considering the fact that the Aston Martin car is currently at the back end of the midfield this year and seems like a challenge to get to grips with. So as a new joiner to the team, Vettel certainly deserves some time to get used to his new surroundings. This is also coupled with the reduced testing time this season in both pre-season tests and the reduced running time during each race weekend. So ultimately the German champion is not the only transferred driver that's struggling with his new machinery at this stage in this season. but it was in Monaco where the German driver proved his worth for the first time this season, qualifying in 8th position, which he converted to 5th in the race after some cars ahead retired and some great strategy from the team. It was a good result for Vettel and the team more generally, and they moved up the order to 5th in the championship. Now, I have my doubts over whether this will continue in the coming races, given the Monaco track is quite unique on the F1 calendar, but nonetheless, the team took a big step back towards where they want to be this season. Whether this came from some developments, a better setup, or just the fact that Vettel is bedding into the team is still unknown, and we probably won't know until after the next race in Baku, but the step that the team took was impressive and shows what they're capable of achieving this season. So the driver transfer for Aston Martin this season has probably taken more time to bed in than the leadership would have wanted, especially when coupled with the fact that their car is not exactly where they wanted to be this season. So you could say that the drivers are another element that's gone wrong for Aston Martin this season. A transition year. The final point to discuss in this video is what this year could mean for the team, considering the real opportunity has become the 2022 regulations for the Silverstone-based team. At what point do the team switch their focus to next season to maximise their chances with these new regulations? Other teams are saying that they've done this already, and it's a real balancing act between this season and next season and how to get the most out of both. Personally, I think it makes sense for the team to almost cut their losses at this point and switch their focus. However, Vettel has mentioned that his preference would be different. He said, "There are so many things that we can still learn, and we can still have a better understanding of as a team, so I think it would be a wasted opportunity." Now, I don't disagree with Vettel's comment here, as I agree there are certainly improvements that could be made with their car throughout the rest of this 23 race season. But does this need to come in the form of significant car developments? Personally, I think they can certainly take some of the learning opportunities in terms of their car setup and general understanding of the car, and perhaps there's something in learning how to work with Sebastian Vettel's feedback for development. But really, for me, right now there are huge opportunities for a reshuffled grid next year. The team has one of, if not the best engine provider in the sport right now, and it will almost certainly stay that way as they head towards the new engine regulations in 2025. So the opportunity is there for the team to take advantage of this and really go for it with next year's car. The team have always gotten the most out of their modest budget during the turbo hybrid era, and they've consistently produced cars that have been capable of being at the front of the midfield. So given the new levels of investment and the budget cap bringing them closer to that higher budget manufacturers, gives the Aston Martin team a better chance than most at taking advantage of these new regulations for next year. So in my opinion, it's time for the Silverstone based outfit to take the opportunity to get ahead. It will mean that they can leave the challenges of the 2021 modified regulations behind them and their challenges of the rules early on this season. And it also allows the team to build their relationship with their new driver, Sebastian Vettel, as he starts to offer his experience and expertise and build the team around him. There will also be times, like in Monaco, where the team do incredibly well, and those are the races that they can learn the most from going into next season. It's clear that Lawrence Stroll's investment in this team is for the long haul. He spent a huge amount on the team already, is building a brand new factory that will help the team long term and bring them all under the same roof. And he's also brought a world champion driver to the team. Realistically, it's the 2022 regulations that will allow the team to expose this potential and make the difference for the team long term. So for me, it's time for them to make the switch, if they haven't already. So that's my view on what's gone wrong for Aston Martin this season, and how I think that they should approach their recovery in the long run. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video and watched this far, then be sure to hit the like and subscribe button for more videos like this one in the future.